It is our pleasure this morning to be able to welcome Bill Burnett, Asher's son-in-law, to be our darshan for this morning.
Hello, everybody. I am honored tremendously to be asked to deliver the drash on this day, the day of my father-in-law Asher's first true bar mitzvah, and to be doing it here at Adat, this grand synagogue that has been his home and his Jewish center, his community for so many years. It is an honor to be here at this bima for this occasion. You know, often when I read the stories in the Torah or the Tanakh, I'm struck by their dreamlike quality. Sometimes, not always, sometimes they're very straightforward, but sometimes, as in the case with today's Haftarah, the stories are brief and told in swift, broad brushstrokes, with details missing and things strangely out of place and things happening and then it's going away, people going away and coming back again. And it is kind of the way we remember things in dreams, isn't it? When we try to tell a dream, things don't quite make sense, and people come, people go. We don't know what's happening with them, and yet they do. When we think about them, they do make a kind of poetic sense. You know, they do seem to be telling us something. And for some reason, the sages, the people years ago who decided what should go with what, you know, that this, if you're going to read this parsha, you're going to read this haftarah, decided that this would be the haftarah that should come after the Vayera haftarah parsha that we heard earlier, which was a parsha very, very heavy, full of lots of disturbing, upsetting things. This one was the one that they thought would add something to it. And what it is it's a story, it's two stories really, about Elisha, not Eliyahu, the Hanavi, but Elisha who came after. And it's a follow-up, of course, to, as Asher talked about, the parsha of the binding of Isaac, and you don't get much more upsetting a story than a man taking his son up to the top of a mountain to kill him. So in this story, Elisha, in the first part of the story, encounters a woman who is destitute and cannot pay her bills. And she's in such bad shape that her kids are going to be taken away as slaves. They're going to sell her kids as slaves to pay her debts. And so she goes to Elisha, she goes to somebody that she trusts, and she says, "What can I do? Help me, please." And he tells her to go get empty pots, you know, empty vessels. That's his advice to her. It's definitely dreamlike advice, right? I mean, you don't give that kind of, I mean, if you're really in an emergency like that, you run, you fight, you hide, you disguise your children, you do something, but you don't go and get empty pots. But, you know, in a dream world, in a dream kind of scape, you do. And so she believes in him, and she goes, she gets the empty pots, she takes them into her house. The pots fill up with oil, miraculously, and she says, "Okay, now what do I do?" And Elisha says, "Well, go sell the oil, pay your debts." Okay? Now that definitely is dream advice, and it's the kind of thing that if you were to wake up, your husband or your wife in the middle of the night and say, I believed that somebody was trying to kill our children, and a wise man told me I should get empty pots, and they were filled up with oil, and I was able to pay our debts by doing that. Your husband or your wife would say, yeah, go back to sleep. And you're left late at night wondering what the heck that was all about. Why did I dream that? What I think it's saying, using dream analysis and what I know of Torah study, is that there are situations that can seem hopeless and yet can turn around in an instant, thanks to that magic that has happened. And it's happened to all of us at one time or another. Things like this have happened to me, it's happened to you, and it's happened to Asher in his life, where things that are hopeless somehow get turned around. And in the second story, a rich woman who has no money problems whatsoever, it's kind of a reverse, is nice to Elisha and feeds him and gives him a place to stay in her house. She makes a special room for him up in the attic, and her problem is that she'd really, really like to have a child, but her husband's too old. So she's invited Elisha into her house and made a place for him to stay. I'm not quite sure what that means. It has a dreamlike quality as well. Elisha doesn't do anything untoward. He says, thanks, that's great, I'll stay in the place, and by the way, you're going to have a child a year from now. And she's taken aback by this. She doesn't know how it's going to happen, but in fact it does. A year later, she does have a child, and she's tremendously happy. And Elisha has once again solved her problem. And the child grows up, gets old enough to go out to work. First day at work, he's going out to work with some reapers. He goes to see to the place of the job, and suddenly something terrible goes wrong with his head. My head, oh my gosh, it's out of the blue. There's nothing mentioned in the story of him getting hit in the head or he's got any kind of problem with his head, but he can't work. And they take him back to his mother's house. His first day at work, he's back. She sits with him. He sits on his mother's lap until noon. That's the details. I think they sit in the room that she made for Elisha. I'm pretty sure that's, so they're sitting up there. He sits on his mother's lap till noon, then he drops dead. It's dream details, you know. I mean, he sits on his mother's lap till noon, and then he drops dead, and she gets upset, of course. This is the child that Elisha promised me, and suddenly he's dead. So she goes to Elisha, and she says, look, you've got to do something about this. And she actually grabs hold of his pant leg and won't let go. And he's got to drag himself back to her house. He goes up into the room, and he lies down on this child, you know, palm to palm, face to face, breath to breath, mouth to mouth. And he breathes into this child, this dead child, and doesn't quite work the first time, apparently. He gets up, walks around the house, does some things, comes back, lies down again, and he breathes life into this child. And the detail, once again, dreamlike detail, is that the child comes back to life and sneezes 7 times. It's a detail. Sneezes 7 times. And so, of course, the woman is tremendously happy, and Elisha has, the commentators on this Haftarah say that what he actually did was breathe a part of his own soul into this child to bring it back to life, which raises an interesting question about can you just take like a little bit of your soul and put it in? If you breathe your soul into somebody else, what happens to your soul? It doesn't go into it there. Anyway, this is the stuff of dreams. In real life, things like this don't actually happen, or do they? Why did the sages pick this story for us to read after we read about the binding of Isaac? I'm sure that to Asher, as a young boy in rural Czechoslovakia, the idea that someday he would regularly be attending a temple like this would have been a dream. I mean, even when things were good in Czechoslovakia, before things went bad, it would have been a dream to think that there would ever even be a place like this. How would you get here? What path would lead you here? And now here he is, sitting here with his lovely wife Lily, and his children, his grandchildren, some of his grandchildren, all the mishpachah are here, all his friends, all the people that have been so important to him for all of these years. And how could it be? How could it be that he could have gotten here? And then, to add to that, when the horrors of Auschwitz and the Holocaust closed around him and many members of his family were killed, and he himself was in danger every day, how could he have imagined in the midst of all that the path would lead here to these great sweeping beams and this ark full of Sefer Torah and that Ner Tamid burning back there, and these wonderful cantors and these wonderful rabbis, so much, and everything, by the way, that the Nazis did their level best to destroy. I mean, it's a pretty amazing reality if you think about it. It's a dream. It couldn't be, and yet it is. So I think Asher sneezed 7 times. I think he's here at Adat Ariel, and so are all of us. And somehow I think Something along those lines is what the sages were trying to tell us, that against all odds and against all logic, even when you're walking through the valley of the shadow of death, you can get rescued, and sometimes dreams do come true, as they have for Asher Kaufman. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.